Okay. Yeah. You should be able to take a computer to like a car, like you take your car to a mechanic. You should be able to take your computer to a mechanic. But like something's wrong with my computer, and he hooks it up to a machine, just like they have the little code sensor. Oh, it's so slow.
Does that guy mean the Dolphins must pick a wide receiver in each of the first 3 rounds or in the first 3 rounds?
In the first 3 rounds.
No.
I must have wrote it wrong.
Because that's not really I mean,
they don't have to.
In their first 5 picks, are they going to take a wide receiver? That's the question.
They don't have to.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I'm reading it right.
Okay.
And yes, they have to, Omar. They have to.
They don't have to. They've probably got space for one more wide receiver.
They what?
Space for one more wide receiver. And if they take Kyle Pitts, I think, not sure if they have space for one more wide receiver.
Okay.
All right, we're ready to launch. If only I knew where the script was. Where is the script? There's the script. All right. I look so.
Get down.
Am I dark? I know I'm naturally dark.
You are dark. Am I light?
Okay. All right. Well, Dolphin fans, we've officially gotten that pre-draft press conference we've all been waiting for. Our one opportunity to talk to General Manager Chris Grier before he makes his selections in the 2021 NFL Draft. Those media sessions are always filled with a few nuggets of information, a few themes, a few messages that the executive of the Miami Dolphins wants to send to prospective players, agents, other teams. Dave, and some of them happen to be smoke screens. Dave, let's dissect that. I'm Omar Kelly. This is Dave Hyde. This is X's and Omar. And Dave, what did you take away from Chris Grier's pre-draft press conference?
Yeah, my takeaway is what I'm writing about. Column, and I thought I'd get it through and post it, and but it'll be coming up after the show, which was to summarize his view in one little nutshell, he's going to get the same value player at 6 that he would have gotten at number 3. That's why they made the trade. In other words, to parse that into the thinking of this draft, there's 4 receivers. Whatever receiver he's going to lose if one's taken before 6, and you would think it'd be Florida's Kyle Pitts, he'll be fine with whatever receiver he gets at 6. The idea, the 4 receivers are Pitts, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Smith, and the other thing, the accompanying thought was that with that is size. On with the new metrics of size in the NFL, and you can see, look at that some of the top players now wouldn't be considered by the Bill Parcells and the people of that time-stamped previous era, players they would invest in, and yet my takeaway is size and age don't matter anymore in the drafting of players. It don't matter as much in the drafting of players.
I understand where you're coming from, and I think that was one of the messages that you clearly got from Chris Greer. The size molds that he learned from the Bill Parcells era doesn't necessarily apply, because this is a spread offense era of the NFL. The NFL has moved into a horizontal game where it spreads you out, throw horizontally left and right, throw up and down the field. So it's more of a wide open game. I don't necessarily agree, but I definitely hear what the thought process is. It still makes me a little concerned when you're talking about a player who's under 170, which is what Devonta Smith showed up at the NFL Combine medical recheck last week. There are guys like Tutu Atwell at 158. I make this issue, and I'm going to be consistent with it. There's a reason that Jakeem Grant hasn't lasted and played a full season in the NFL. And that's because he's tiny. And I really do believe that the more hits that you take as a smaller player from these big, fast, physical athletes leads to durability issues. So it'll be interesting to see where we go with this draft. I think another message that he got across was that, he brought up voluntarily, Dave, in terms of the NFL is devaluing the running back position. And he doesn't necessarily agree with that. What he does agree with is the fact that it's going to have to be where you evaluate those running backs. If you evaluate the running back as a top 5, top 10 player, top 20 player, top 40 player, that's where you need to select them. And it's just a matter of understanding where that evaluation is and being comfortable with that spot. I have been told that there are two teams that most people in the NFL project and believe that a certain running back, who shall not be named, is going to be taken in the first round. One of them happens to be the Miami Dolphins, one happens to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. They would be shocked and surprised if he falls after 24. And then if he falls after 24, more than likely he's going to be snagged up by the Buffalo Bills. The last thing I want is that certain running back in my division playing against me 2 times a year. But then again, anything is game in the NFL.
Yeah, the history of first-round running backs, recent history, though, isn't a good one, Omar. As far as roster building and team building, the teams that have taken them, Kansas City picked one 32nd last year. Now, they made the Super Bowl. But to me, that's the philosophy of how you take a running back in the first round. It's about the last thing they needed, right? They were built. They were a built team. Although they could have used a backup tackle maybe when you get to the Super Bowl. But that's my philosophy. Okay, our first question comes from Alex. If Jamar Chase goes to the Bengals, which is being speculated, among other things, what factors go into Kyle Pitts versus Penei Sewell?
I don't even think there's a discussion or conversation about Kyle Pitts versus Sewell. Pitts is on my board as the second highest rated player in this draft behind Trevor Lawrence. A lot of people believe he's a generational tight end. I personally don't. I would compare him to a Vernon Davis. Vernon Davis, in fact, had higher metrics in terms of strength, speed, vertical. But I think that Kyle Pitts is going to be that chess piece that allows your offense to become a nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators, and that's the value of him. Now, you can go to the whole argument of Penei Sewell. I believe that this offensive line has 4 quality or decent starters. I would love to add one more piece to this line that would actually just make it exceptional. That would be Penei Sewell, a guard. Actually, let me correct myself. A tackle with the movement skills of a guard. He's athletic. As a tackle, he could turn the corner left and right, swing out, take out a linebacker. He's got that kind of athleticism, and it would be a phenomenal addition to the Miami Dolphins. If they select him at 6, I would probably applaud it. It'll be a bold move, bold decision, but it goes to my philosophy about building football teams inside out and in the trenches. If you win those trenches, Dave, you got a chance to win on Sunday.
Wait a second, Omar. Wait a second. I backtrack. I want to get a couple things straight. First of all, did you change your thoughts on the offensive line? You said that you think they have 4 starters now, as opposed to having holes across the line. If we had a little sea change here.
I never said they had holes. I'm buying into your developmental thought process that these young men will get better. I've seen Instagram pictures of Solomon Kinley. He looks a little bit leaner. He looks a little bit fitter. He looks a little bit offensive line sexy right now. He's probably
You're coming around. You're coming around. Now, so who would you take, Pitts or Sewell?
Pitts, no question about it. If Pitts Pitts, no question about it. I would take Chase over Sewell as well. But if Pitts and Chase are gone, I'm going to have to seriously debate this and consider it with myself, because I look at Sewell as a player probably above Devonta Smith. I'm debating whether he's above Jalen Waddle.
If Pitts and Chase are gone, does that make the trade? Does that make you reconsider the trade to 6? That's what we're going to have to really get to, right, with the Dolphins?
Yeah, I think that, there's been a lot of speculation about what the Dolphins want to do, what they intend to do. I can't sit here and say that, when they made this decision, they obviously debated and factored in every possible scenario. They always knew there's a scenario where the Falcons would take a tight end, or the Falcons would take, I don't think the Falcons would take a wide receiver, but the Falcons would take the tight end. And then Cincinnati, you got to look at Cincinnati's roster and say, there's a possibility where the Falcons would take the tight end. I think this only falls apart if the tight end is selected in the top 5. If it doesn't happen, it is what it is.
Okay, Sal wants to know which rookies from last season, which rookie needs to step up this season?
Obviously, and Chris Greer talked about it, I think the best aspect of the Brian Flores coaching staff is their ability to help groom and develop young players. They showed you that last year. Christian Wilkins took a next step in his game. Ryan Sealer took a next step in his game. You've got young guys like Austin Jackson, Raekwon Davis, Robert Hunt, Solomon Kinley, Tua in particular. They need to take the next step in their game. I obviously, if Tua doesn't take the next step, we're probably looking at quarterbacks in 2022 and saying, hey, here Tua, compete. So he's got to take the next step. I think that Raekwon Davis was probably the rookie who had the best rookie season. And if he takes the next step in his development, I think that they could have a monster of an offensive line. I have been told the Dolphins are seriously considering taking a nose tackle early, taking one of the best nose tackles, and putting Raekwon Davis as an end. And that is an absolutely intriguing thought process for me, because Raekwon Davis can set an edge, and you could possibly collapse a pocket, getting into passing lanes. And it's just a brilliant idea and concept, and I would love to see that happen, but you got to find the right nose tackle. Raekwon Davis isn't necessarily a nose tackle. From what I'm told, he's too tall to collapse the pocket. He can hold his point, but he needs to have the leverage to collapse the pocket to be a real good nose tackle. So it'll be interesting to see what they do, but they certainly have options.
Yeah, when you say, if we're making this singular, which rookie has to step up? I mean, it's obvious. This whole rebuild is built around Tua. I mean, you put so many resources, you sacrificed a few seasons for the idea of getting a top draft pick, to get a quarterback to answer the problem of this franchise for 2 decades. Okay?
They built the line around him last year. This year, get him the weapons that he needs. So you make a very good point. This whole thing is built around Tua.
Yeah, and if he does, if we're sitting here, is he the guy, isn't he the guy after year 2, after all these resources have been brought in to help him, assuming some more resources are coming in the draft, which we all expect, then we're looking at, and already you can see it lining up. Is Aaron Rodgers going to be coming out of Green Bay? Is Russell Wilson coming out of Seattle? Is what's going on with Deshaun Watson? I mean, there are going to be a lot of
Yeah.
A lot of balls in the air to consider next offseason, not to get ahead of ourselves. Okay.
Yeah. Let's take one off season at a time, Dave.
Yeah.
Capster Dave has a good one. Do you really think the Falcons would pass on a QB when they may never be this high before Matt Ryan implodes? Selecting guy.
Yeah, I do. I can. You can argue this in that Matt Ryan is 35 now, 36. Quarterbacks are playing to 40, and Matt Ryan wasn't the problem last year. I'm not saying he's a top 5 quarterback, but you can win with him. And the question really becomes, what do you think of the 4th quarterback in the draft? Does this draft go 4 franchise quarterbacks deep? And what do you think of a Kyle Pitts? I mean, that's really what you're going to be measuring, okay? So I can see them definitely passing on a quarterback.
I'm going to say this, and it's going to be a controversial opinion because usually I have controversial opinions. This draft is artificially inflated with quarterbacks. I mean, you haven't seen.
They all are.
They all are. You're correct, but this more than others. You haven't seen Trey Lance play more than 1 game last season, and he was bad in that game. He was bad. Then you got Mac Jones, like, oh my God. And yeah, we can make the same argument about Tua. He's playing.
Don't go down that road too far, Omar. If you're a Tua fan, don't do that.
I mean, but I've learned a little bit from the Tua evaluation with the Mac Jones evaluation. The RPO offense is paint by numbers. And literally, if you got a 1 here, then you throw the 2. If you got a 2 here, then you throw the 3. And it makes the job for quarterbacks easy. But now we're talking about Mac Jones, an unathletic quarterback in an era of athletic quarterbacks, going in the top 4, top 8. Like, are you kidding me? In past drafts, he might be a 2nd-round pick. Justin Fields is probably the 2nd best quarterback, not a quarterback that I like because I just don't like his style, his mold of a quarterback. I'm not into the Cam Newton types. He is the Cam Newton type. Athletic, wants to run, wants to take off, 1 or 2 reads, and those are the decisions. Great arm. But I can understand why teams would want to invest in him. But is he worth a top 5 selection? He's probably not.
You know, I've been pumping up this guy's quarterback ratings for the last few years, and I'll stick with him. Chris Sims on NBC, and you look at his ratings, where he's rated guys the last 4 years, I believe. And I put a blog up on it the other day, and he's been very accurate on the results. Okay, and right now he has Zach Wilson as the number 1 quarterback. I like people who go against conventional thought, okay, just to make you think so we'll see, but he's been very accurate. He says Zach Wilson's the best quarterback right now. Trevor Lawrence is 2nd. Justin Fields is 5th. I'm curious to see how this plays out because, again, last year he went against conventional thinking. Joe Burrow was 1, and Justin Herbert was 2, and very close to Burrow, he said. And he had Tua as the 4th quarterback. And look, these aren't all you Tua fans out there. We're not in the conclusion stage of anything yet. Okay, this is all a sketch right now after year 1, and we're going to start filling in the colors of the picture in year 2. So, but it's interesting what he had Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson as 1 and 2 1 year when obviously Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold were picked as the first 2 quarterbacks. So, look, if you're looking for information, it's just interesting to see how it all plays out. And, you know, that gets into the quarterback and what Atlanta's going to do and all that.
It's always the failed quarterbacks that make the best quarterback evaluators, Dave. Yeah. Trent Dilfer, too.
All right, let's take a deep dive on this roster to determine what the position of needs are heading into next week's draft. The Dolphins signed offensive tackle DJ Fluker this week, that bringing the total of players re-signed or added as free agents to 19. Holes still exist. The way the roster looks now, what is missing, Omar?
Well, if we go down the roster, we got to start with the edge players. whether it be a 5 technique like a Kyle Van Noy, whether it be a 3 technique like an Emmanuel Ogba, whether it be an outside linebacker like Vince Beagle, you got to add probably one of all 3 to this team from a depth standpoint. Just roster building. Yes, Jason Strowbridge is there, and he could possibly be the 3 technique. And yes, Vince Beagle was added, and he could possibly be the other outside linebacker paired with Kyle Van Noy. Or maybe, Bernardrick McKinney can play that role, and Landon Roberts can continue to remain a starter. But you got to get better on pass rushing, and you got to get better on edge setting. That's the starting point for this defense. Now let's move to the offense. Obviously, you need help at wide receiver. I'm not going to sit here and say that tight end is a need, because it's really not a need. You got Mike Gesicki, you got Durham Smythe, you got Adam Shaheen. Those 3 players set franchise records last year. Receptions, passers receiving yards, and touchdowns. The best the tight end position has ever played. And now their position coach is the head coach. So obviously productivity is probably going to increase. But they could certainly use a dynamic weapon like a Kyle Pitts, who can be a slot receiver, who can be an H-back, who can be a split end, who can be a flanker, who can be an inline tight end, just a guy that creates that kind of confusion. And then we get to my position, the running back. While Myles Gaskin had a impressive, productive season in his second year, and that's another guy who's second-year development, you got to get a back who can grind out a game when you're up in the fourth quarter and you got 8 minutes left. You need a back who can kill at least 4 minutes of clock running the football. Run your 4-minute offense and just grind these teams out, and that helps you in the red zone. And then it would benefit you if that back can pass protect and he can pass catch. I got my mind on who I want, but it'll come down to how willing are the Dolphins to select him in the first round, because they certainly have to understand that player, who shall remain nameless, is not going to be there in the second round.
Yeah, Omar, again, what I would say, and this, you're in a catch-22 here, because my thought is, in today's game, if you want to improve your running back, improve the offensive line. Don't worry about the running back too hard. Improve the offensive line. And so, but if the question is what holes on the roster exist, what is it missing? I'll tell you what's missing, and that's greatness. Okay, now maybe some of these young kids develop into greatness. You need 5-6 Pro Bowl players to be a contending team. Okay, depending on where they are and all that. But let's say, you need greatness. Now this gets to the whole philosophical idea of the rebuild. They traded, Chris Greer's drafted 3 Pro Bowl players, 1 All-Pro player. They traded 2 of them to get draft picks. In Laramie Tunsil.
You're forgetting about Jason Sanders.
Okay. Every down player. Okay, and I'm not dismissing. It's very important. Okay, and if they miss a field goal at the end or they make it at the end, yes, that's where he comes into play, and I'm not dismissing that. But so they traded 2 of their Pro Bowl players, 1 All-Pro, Minkah Fitzpatrick and Laramie Tunsil, for picks. You got to turn those picks into great players, and yes, it matters what positions they are, but you need some. You need some to develop and into greatness.
My toughest decision about this draft, and because they're sitting right up there at the top in terms of needs for me, is we know what's going to happen at 6. It's going to be a playmaker more than likely. But then when you get to 18, it's, do you pick one of the top end pass rushers, edge setters, or do you pick a generational back, in my opinion? And that's a real tough debate, but it really comes down to how deep do you feel this draft is at defensive end versus how deep you feel this draft is at running back. I would make the argument to you that there are only 3 backs in this draft that really can make a difference for this Dolphins offense. Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and Javonte Williams. Now, let's go to the ends and the edge players. I can tell you that there are quite a few ends, outside linebackers, 5 technique, 3 technique, that can actually get the job done. The 2 kids, Gregory Rousseau and Jalen Phillips. You got Kwity Payne from Michigan. You got Carlos Basham. You got Ronnie Perkins. You got Rashad Weaver. You got Patrick Johnson. Then you get into the pass rushers, the Keys Ojulari from Georgia. You get into Joseph Osai. You get into Joe Tryon. You get into Jordan Smith. And I'm sorry, but one of the, we didn't even get into Ellerson Smith. And I tease people on Twitter about, I think that there are 3 defensive ends that I would target with my top 50 selections if I'm the Miami Dolphins. Jalen Phillips, who I think you'd have to take him at 18 if he's not there. Washington's Joe Tryon. He could be at 18, or he could be an early pick in the second round. A lot of evaluators believe he might be the top pass rusher in this draft from Washington. Missed all of last season because his league did not play. And then there's a young guy that from Northern Iowa, who, when I watched this film, reminded me a lot of Jason Taylor. You watch him at the Senior Bowl, reminded me a lot of Jason Taylor. 6'7", 260 pounds. Ellerson Smith, 22 sacks at Northern Iowa in his first 3 years. They didn't play last season. So he's spent a year out of football. He's gotten bigger. He's gotten stronger. He really killed it at the Senior Bowl. Now, he's projected to be a third-day guy. Maybe I take him in the second day.
Omar, what about the guy out of Tulsa, Zavin Collins? Now, he's a linebacker, but he's a pass rusher. I mean, that reminds me of Jason Taylor. I'm not even a draftnik, and that guy reminded me of Jason.
I look at him as an inside linebacker. I don't really look at him as a pass rusher. He's a Benardrick McKinney type, and if he's there at 18, I'd give it some serious consideration. Problem is, he showed up at the combine recheck at 270 pounds. I'm like, whoa. That's a lot.
Jason Taylor then. The other issue, the subset issue question there, because I agree with you on Jalen Phillips. If he's there at 18, all except for one issue, and that's the big issue you got to come to terms with. He left football in 2018 because of concussions. He sat out 2019. He was done because of concussions. Can you draft a guy like that in the first round?
You cannot. You cannot. That's the number one reason. There are 2 reasons why you see highly touted guys, players that the mock drafters, the draftniks, are just absolutely glowing over. And Jalen Phillips, when you watch his film, he is without a doubt, unquestionable, a first-round talent. The most polished pass rusher. I listed him in my position rankings as the number 1 pass rusher in this draft. The problem is, when you see guys slide, it's either character flaws, poor reviews from coaches, poor reviews from people who work with him, or the medical. And how are you going to draft a concussion-prone player playing a physical position in the first round?
Yeah, that's the issue. And unfortunately, because he's perfect for this defense.
Yeah.
He is a perfect fit. He can move around. He can play 3-4, 4-3, and I love to watch him at Miami. But that's a tough issue to sign off on if you're the general manager.
And the funny thing is, and let's not disrespect Gregory Rousseau, because he started this process as the top-rated defensive end player in this draft. And you know what's allowed him to slide and drastically take a pitfall and possibly will make him be in the second round? He did his pro day with Jalen Phillips and the other Quincy Roche. And both of them, doing all 3 drills, look drastically more athletic than a 270-pound Gregory Rousseau. And it just made him look bad. If he was out there doing those position drills probably by himself and nobody had anything to compare it to, snap for snap, apples to apples, he'd probably still be projected as a first rounder. I think that Rousseau could potentially be the next great defensive end, following in the lines of what's his name? You just wrote a column about him. Calais Campbell. I remember watching that draft back in 2000, and I forget what that draft was, 2008. And Calais Campbell slid to the third round. And I'm thinking to myself, after covering him at what the hell are these people thinking? And
I think he went 50th overall, didn't he? And all I remember is the Dolphins picked, and this gets into if you could do it over. Philip Merlin at 32, and Calais Campbell went 50th, I believe. And look at the career. That's one of those what ifs. There's been a lot of them in the last 2 decades.
We got to get away from the what ifs, Dave Hyde.
The only way to do that is you start winning. Okay. Next question comes from Greg. Excluding Xavier Howard and Jason Sanders, who will be Miami's next Pro Bowl players?
I think you're going to really, outside of some of these young players that are still developing, like the Tuas and the Austin Jackson, you got to look at the guys who were performing last year: Emmanuel Ogbah, Jerome Baker, Mike Gesicki, Devontae Parker, Eric Rowe. Devontae Parker, if he played all 16 games healthy, which we know is just never going to happen, he would put up Pro Bowl level productivity. Mike Gesicki,
if he played with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who just threw the ball up to him and said, "Go get it," and he got it. I mean, he was great.
You got make a point. You make a strong point.
It's chemistry too, and maybe that develops in the offseason with Tua. I mean, that's the hope and the idea.
Working together.
My thought when I was thinking about this and you are the first person who really turned me on to this player about mid-season last year, Raekwon Davis. I think he can be great. Okay, and when I going through who has the ceiling, he showed he can have a very high ceiling, and get up there to be a Pro Bowl player. The others, good players, or they've been in the league a while, and so they've reached probably what they're going to be. But all right, where are we?
Uncle Luke, Luther Campbell, who asks, did the Dolphins spend all their money on defensive backs so they could go cover zero, which means man-to-man with no deep help over the top? And also, he asks, is Devontae Parker in the same class as Julio Jones and Megatron? Let me start with the cover zero. And I understand where he's going with this thought process. The Dolphins have invested a lot of money in their secondary because that's the way the Patriots have built. They build backwards. And it's working, so I can't sit here and say that it doesn't work. But they believe if you've got a secondary that can cover people and lock them down, the front, the linebackers, the blitzing, the defensive line, they'll eventually put enough pressure on the quarterback. And it's working, but they don't do cover zero because Bobby McCain is always the last line of defense. Nobody ever gets back behind Bobby McCain. And there's some significance to that. I mean, you don't want to get beat big, and Bobby McCain's the reason you don't get beat big very often.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the second part. Is Devontae Parker in the class of Julio Jones and Megatron? Short answer, no. I mean, these were Pro Bowl and or Hall of Fame receivers, okay?
Yeah.
Devontae Parker has had 2 great years. His first 3 years. No, I'd say 2. I'd say his last 2 years he's been very good. Okay, I mean, very good to great.
Wait, hold on. Wait. You would say he was great last year, but you would waive him? Because according to Dave Hyde's blueprint for the offseason,
yes,
waive all the receivers.
Yes. My question is, and this gets into where he fits in the offense, okay? He is not a crisp route runner whose talent is his talent is you throw the ball up there and he's going to get it, okay? Right. And that's what Ryan Fitzpatrick did. If that's my offense,
yeah,
I love him. He's great. And now the question is, can he fit into a disciplined route running, defense reading offense?
That has always been the weakness of his game. It's sloppy route running. And the question is, at what point will coaches clean that up? And now we're talking about a 6-year pro.
I was going to say, we're 6 years in. I mean, so that's my question. It isn't, is he talented? Can he make big plays? Does he want to be great? Yes, it's if I'm running a disciplined offense where you're reading defenses and options and all that, where does he fit into that offense? So that was more my questions about him. Okay, Zach the Great asked, is drafting Rashawn Slater over a playmaker at 6 the best move for Tua's development?
It is not. And as much as I love offensive lineman, Rashawn Slater, and I do believe he is better than Penei Sewell as a protector, I would draft Penei Sewell over Slater because I want the run game asset that Sewell is. I think he's going to be mauling people in the NFL for years to come. So I definitely wouldn't select Slater over Sewell for the Dolphins. But I will say this. Who is going to make the more easier contributions to this team as the number 6 pick? An offensive lineman or Devonta Smith or Jalen Waddle? And I'm going to have to go with Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle because they are both the type of weapons that you throw quick hitches, you throw screens, you give them 5 easy, you jet sweeps, you give them 5 easy plays a week, and you should instantly get 40 yards, if not a touchdown from it. And I'm just being conservative. And I think people will much rather have that than have the offensive line and have the mauling guard and have the quarterback that's protected and gets an extra second. I could go and improve my offensive line in the later rounds, and this just doesn't even sound like me, Dave. It sounds like you.
Now you're speaking. You're speaking to the choir here. Keep going. This is my philosophy.
It is your philosophy, but that's only because these specific receivers are very hard to find, and they will not be available after pick number 50. They're all going to be gone with probably the exception of Tutu Atwell, who I like, by the way, but he's 158 pounds soaking wet. We're dealing with another Jakeem Grant here. And you know how that makes me. But it has to be about generational talent. And I would not say Penei Sewell is a generational talent. I wouldn't say Waddle and Smith are generational talent. So if we're taking generational talents off the table, just give me the wide receiver. Give me the playmaker.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's what they need. That's how they build. You get a fast wide receiver. You're opening up the defenses in a different way. That's the way to help Tua out. I mean, let's turn that around. If they would, for the sake of argument, take a offensive lineman pick, look at how they have roster built. Then in the past 3 drafts, they have used a full draft on the offensive line. That'd be 2 number 1s, a second, a third, a fourth, and $10 million a year in free agency on the offensive. You can't throw that many resources. You got to be better than that. You got to trust that your decisions were better.
I do it. If you told me, give me one area outside of quarterback, take quarterback off the table, give me one unit that is exceptional on your team. Just one. You can pick one unit that can be exceptional on your team. You know what unit I'm picking, Dave? I'm picking the offensive line. Because you know what?
Name an exceptional, and I mean exceptional offensive line that's won the Super Bowl or gone to the Super Bowl in recent years.
It's not about
Dallas for years had the best offensive line.
Yes, you're right. And I'm not arguing that with you. But it's about propping up an average team. How do you prop up an average team? You win the trenches. You win the line of scrimmage. You sat here and you said the Dolphins don't have any exceptional talent. You're right. There is no debating that. Xavier Howard and Jason Sanders are their only top-end talents on this team. So you know how do you make them better? You own the line of scrimmage. You produce a physical run game. You beat up teams. And eventually, if you continue to do that, you can build on everything else.
Yeah, I guess my addendum, I think I said at the time, they need to develop those players that they're drafting into these great. But that's the whole idea of this rebuild is they're going to have some of those great players grow up. All right, time to play your favorite game, Omar, and I'm growing to like it. True or false? We'll ask the question. You ask the question, we'll tell you the legitimacy of your claim. True or false? John asks, will Greer value the edge position over running back with the 18th pick?
My prayers to the football gods, and I got my prayers answered last year. Thank you.
Do it for Omar. Do it for Omar.
Najee Harris is the perfect piece and the perfect complement to this Dolphins offense. He is built for the RPO, set every single Alabama record, is Tua's best friend. Let's do it for Tua.
No, do it for Omar, not for Tua.
Do it for Tua.
And there is a growing Alabama to the Dolphins connection. It's like Nick Saban's still the coach here, and he's bringing the players in, bringing them in. Now I'm gonna have an exception the way the question was phrased. Will Greer value the edge position over? Everybody values the edge position over the running back. Okay, so now where are they going to take with the second? That's one of the great mysteries of this draft, and who's going to be there and what they can do. And if you look at the mock drafts, everybody's all over the board. Pretty much it's playmaker with the 6th pick. Okay, the top receiver to fall, pretty much. Okay, yes. That's the consensus. At 18, you pick a position, and linebacker is very popular. Notre Dame linebacker, some Penn State linebacker, but edge rusher, running back for Omar. I mean, it's all over the place. So
I think it's going to be predicated on if there's a run on the edge players and linebackers in the teams. If they just start being gobbled up off the board, Miami's hand will be forced. And they've got to pick a Joe Tryon or Azeel Ojulari because they might end up empty-handed in the second round. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. It really.
So to me, the question at running back, and yeah, the top 3 running backs you mentioned, Pittsburgh wants a running back. Jacksonville might take one.
Buffalo,
Atlanta, right before the Dolphins. The question is, would they have to jump? Or do they have to jump to get one of those? The Jets, the second round pick.
Also probably going to pick one. And my worst fear, as I've said to you previously, is if Najee Harris is playing for the Buffalo Bills or the New York Jets, it's going to be your worst nightmare. It truly is going to be your worst nightmare.
All right, Keith has our next one. True or false, the Dolphins must pick a wide receiver in the first 3 rounds?
Oh, I think it's definitely true. I just don't necessarily agree with the fact that they have to take one in the first round. As history has shown, and you and Sebekis love to throw these history and draft studies, and history has shown that the best receivers in the NFL are not the first round picks. Yeah. The Jarvis Landrys of the world, the Buffalo Stephon Diggs of the world. They make
DeAndre Hopkins. It was a 5th rounder. Yeah, you can go that route, but there's also the Julio Jones, the Larry Fitzgeralds. If you have
in the first
Megatrons, I mean, if you have a chance to get one early.
Yeah, but none of these are. Jamar Chase is probably the closest to a generational wide receiver. But I make this argument. Those types of wide receivers come out every 2 years. It's what the league produce. It's what college football produces.
And this is a draft. This draft is deep with the Minnesota wide receiver is very interesting. So I mean,
Bateman, and then you got Elijah Moore, Tutu Atwell, Shi Smith. These are 3 receivers that I really like. They could all be there in day 2 and day 3, and you don't have to. You're not going to walk away with something. There's going to be something missing from this draft, just like last year there was a running back missing from the draft. It's either going to be you're not going to get the center you want. You're not going to get the running back you need. You're not going to get the pass rusher that you need. Or you're not going to get the receiver that you need. Now, Dolphin fans would absolutely slit their wrists if they didn't end up with the receiver that they need, even though I would argue to you that's the position where you have the most depth on the team.
You can disagree there, but okay, Mark with our next one. True or false? This is Greer's most important draft since he became GM.
I would disagree. I say that's false. His most important draft was last year's draft when he got Tua and built an offensive line for him. Not a good offensive line, but he built an offensive line.
You're back to that. You're back to that.
They're not good. What do you want me to do? 3.9 yards per carry. What do you want me to do? Say they were good? They weren't good.
You want to say you had started 3 rookies, and we'll see if they're good this year. We'll see where they develop this year.
Dave. They got coach fired.
Something happened there. They got coach has been fired. Offensive coordinators are on their 3rd one in 3 years. All right, but I agree. Look, taking Tua was the most important decision he'll have as a GM. That is 60% of a GM's job in the NFL, getting the right quarterback. And after that, it's keeping the right quarterback. So last year was the big draft. Not to dismiss this draft, of course, because the whole rebuilding plan was these 2 drafts, but last year was the best one. Okay, Eric S. asks, true or false, Miami's defense will continue to be a top 5 defense next year?
I'm going to have to go with false. And the reason I say false is because you cannot consistently rely on getting all of those turnovers that you got, primarily because of Xavier Howard. Hopefully Xavier Howard is who he was last year, and maybe that helps you a little bit. Young players are going to get better, but I don't see any pass rushers. If you're going to have to blitz all the time to get pressure, and I get it, that's part of your scheme, but eventually teams are going to pick up on it and figure it out.
Yeah, I'm gonna say false on the wording of the question. They were the 6th ranked defense this year. They weren't top 5 this year. So, but okay, Big Hodge 4 has our next question. True or false, the Dolphins are the biggest threat to the Bills in the East?
I can't tell you another threat unless Cam Newton's just going to resurrect his career and all of a sudden become this elite player. Or maybe the Buffalo Bills get Jimmy Garoppolo. I think things could change if Buffalo Bills get Jimmy Garoppolo. But, yeah, without a doubt, it's the Dolphins. Hopefully Tua develops and maybe we can make a run for this just like we had the Jim Kelly and Dan Marino years. Tua's got to be good. I mean, there's no mistaking it.
Yeah, they're not a threat right now. I mean, we don't know what they are, okay? The question is, if Zach Wilson goes to the Jets and he's a great quarterback, they're the threat. If Bill Belichick ever figures out, if he trades up for whoever, Mac Jones, whoever, and he's great, they're the biggest threat. I mean, ultimately it comes down to who can challenge Josh Allen, and then we'll, patch in all the questions. For 20 years, we waited to see if team would get a quarterback in the AFC East to challenge Tom Brady. We never got there. We never got there. Okay. Reginald Brown has a good one. True or false? If the Dolphins get Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase, they move on from Devontae Parker for cap reasons.
This is false. And this is a dumb question because I just don't understand how people don't understand the business end of the NFL. Devontae Parker is expensive this year, and he's not even that expensive.
No, he's not that expensive. He's $7 million on the cap this year.
And then next year and the year after that, he's making less than $6 million a year. He's being paid like a backup wide receiver. Like, you keep Devontae Parker as long as he's healthy because he's going to be an affordable and cheap number 2.
Yeah, he's $8 million and $9 million on the cap the following 2 years. That's his cap number, and that can be adjusted if you want. So, yeah. I mean, it really wouldn't have anything to do with money.
Less than $6 million, which is ridiculous.
Ammo asks, true or false, the Dolphins will make a trade on draft night with one of their first-round picks?
That is absolutely true. And the reason I say it's true is because Chris Grier has made more trades than any other executive in the NFL for the last 5 years. He is the gambler. He is a trading man. And it's just in his nature, and I expect him to do it.
I can't disagree with you. I'm going to just say false on pure going the other way, that they've already traded down once. They made a big move to 6, okay? And while they put out feelers, and Chris Grier again mentioned, yeah, we'll listen if we get if someone wants to be aggressive and make a pitch to us. Of course, we'll weigh it with our options and all. So he's saying we're open for business to see what the deal would be.
When is we're not open for business?
Well, when is anybody not open for business? But you're right. He's not afraid to make a move or a trade if he thinks it betters the Dolphins or adds value. So it's fun in that regard. Okay, Robert wants to know, true or false, by the time the season starts, a major rebuilding plan will be complete, and it will be then about having a normal season where Miami can tweak personnel.
I'll put that question in just for you, Dave, because I know you're tired of the forever rebuild. I will make the argument and still make the argument that the 2009 season, where you purged your roster's talent, Kiko Alonso thrown overboard, Katie Stills thrown overboard, Laramie Tunsil thrown overboard, veteran players like Akeem Spence thrown overboard, just so that you could be bad. That year does not count.
It doesn't count. So Christian Wilkins being drafted, first round doesn't count. You go through that whole. So the first draft doesn't count, Omar. All the personnel,
actually,
all that.
That's a bad draft. In fact,
that counts. It still counts if it's a bad draft, Omar. That was the first steps of the rebuild.
Draftees. Nick Needham, Preston Williams were your top players in that draft class. Now, the second year, when those draft picks start to develop, the Andrew Van Ginkels, the Christian Wilkins, now that counts. So my rebuild day started in 2020. I don't count it.
When does it ever end, Omar? That's the question. When does the clock start again then on the Dolphins?
My clock for the Dolphins, and I'm serious about this, it's a heart attack. My clock for the Dolphins starts in the 2022 season, when Tua has 20 games of experience under his belt. He's got a year of chemistry with his weapon. He's got a completely brick wall of an offensive line. He's got a top 10 defense. Clock starts.
That was the question when they started the rebuild. I said, come back in 4 years, because you're that when you go this route.
Yeah.
And it's what I don't like about this route is you're saying, and they never said it, and Flores was very demonstrative of not saying it, but their actions said something else.
Absolutely.
That look, today doesn't matter as results.
It
okay, was it's the process. It's the process.
Yes.
And
it was a scorched earth rebuild where you tore it down to the studs and you started all over again, and that takes some time. And the one thing that I will say this is the first time we've seen this. I don't even think Parcells did this back in 2008. This is the first time we've seen this. I've never seen this.
How many great teams have been built this way? I can't come up with, look at, Belichick didn't do this in New England.
Kansas City wasn't.
Nobody wants to go through the losing or the potential losing that. Now they won 10 games last year.
That's a good question. I can't name a team that's done it this way.
You know why? Because not many owners will allow GMs and coaches to get this.
After what Steve Ross has been through, which I have been through since 2007, can you blame him? Can you blame him?
The question is it the right way, not question can you blame him? And ultimately it comes down to,
if this doesn't work next year, let's just put all our eggs into getting a Brett Favre from the Green Bay Packers.
That's like saying, they hired Cam Cameron. He was an awful coach. Can you blame them for not hiring an offensive coordinator as a head coach? No, it depends on the person. It depends. I
can blame them for not hiring Mike Tomlin when they interviewed him and loved him.
Absolutely. It comes down to the individual decisions like that. Mike Tomlin, who just signed another 3-year deal in Pittsburgh, he'll been there for 15 years, successful years, while the Dolphins, we don't know where they're going to be in 3 years, but they floundered, to this point. Okay, OG Highway asks our final true-false. Tua has no influence on what pass catchers Miami will draft.
I believe that is absolutely false. we heard from Brian Flores a month ago. What did Brian Flores tell us he did? Him and Tua went out to lunch. You think him and Tua went out to lunch and didn't have a conversation about all of his Alabama playmakers and who he thinks would make the best fit for this offense and the background on all their personalities and how hard they work and who has the dog and who loves football, who would fit with me, who do I have to babysit? You don't think Tua gave Brian Flores that blueprint, Dave?
I'm sure he did, and Brian Flores picked his brain on all the players at Alabama, as if I'm the coach I am. And you know what? If I'm Chris Grier, I take all the information in, but I do not let that influence my decision on what Tua wants, because we've seen this before, and I go back, Nick Saban drafted SEC players heavy, and you know what we said then? Oh, this is really smart. He knows these players. You know what we realized? Afterwards, he didn't know the greater college football world. Okay, Tua knows his players, the players he deal with. He doesn't know Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts or what the receiving group gets.
He might from the 7-on-7 elite football circuit. All these guys know each other. That's how he created a bond with Najee Harris.
If you're Chris Grier, do you trust all your decisions? Oh,
my whole franchise.
Tua wants this guy. He's been in the league a year. He must know everything.
My whole franchise and this entire rebuild is on Tua's shoulders. Yes, I trust it.
So you give Tua the best player that you can, not the player that he thinks is best. You give him the best player you have.
I give Tua who he wants. I do. That's how I build it. If this is my quarterback and he is my quarterback, I give him who he wants, because he clearly, and I understand where I'm coming from. This generation of athletes, from the Russell Wilsons to the Aaron Rodgers, you know what their issues are? They want influence. They want control. Tua is from that generation.
No, wait a second. You're comparing Tua to Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers, two Super Bowl MVPs, and you say after his rookie year that was marginal, he should have the same influence as Rodgers and Russell Wilson.
If I believe in a quarterback, I'm giving him the influence. I'm giving him the power to tell me what you want, tell me what you need. I'm going to deliver it for you. Because understand, while Brian Flores is the coach, Brian Flores is not the person who makes the operation, the engine of the machinery on the offense. Tua is. And you know what Tua knows? The conductor knows what he needs. And he's had the opportunity to play with three players, that could be Miami Dolphins, could be top first-round picks. Najee Harris, Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle. He knows what they bring to the table.
He does. He does. But you know what he doesn't know? He doesn't know what everybody else brings to the table in the receiving group, in the running back group, in the other options at those draft picks. He hasn't earned that. He's got to earn. Look, Russell Wilson has earned it to say this is what I think our offense. Aaron Rodgers has earned that.
Fair.
Tua's not there. He's not there yet.
I still give it to him, Dave. Well, thank you for watching X's and Omar. Always a pleasure for those who watch it live or those who watch it on the replay on the Sun Sentinel website. If you have X's and Omar questions, just ask them on Twitter with the hashtag XOmar. I will find them. Also, we'll use some of them on the Dolphins Q&A, and you'll find that on the Sun Sentinel's Dolphins page. X's and Omar's airs on the Sun Sentinel site and also on any place you can find podcast shows. Just search X and Omar and you'll find us there. We will be back next Wednesday, Dave, for the final pre-draft show. Are you ready?
Finally, the final one. Woo, it's been a long journey to get here.
Yeah, obviously, and finally we'll be on phase 2 of the rebuild. All right. 2.
3. We can argue this forever.
Yeah, always. See you later, guys.